and that is always perfect. So let me just catch Limor and Allison. This is, I guess, your first time joining us for this series of Torah and Tea. So what we've been actually doing is we've been studying ethics of our fathers, and we discussed that there's this, within Mishnah, there are 63 books of Mishnah, or series, sections, dealing with all sorts of all parts of life, literally ranging from agricultural law to courts to marriage to divorce, like really the full span of human experience. Hi. So glad you joined us. Hi. Hi, Elizabeth.
Hi, or Betsy. Call me Betsy.
Betsy, perfect. How are you?
Yeah, good. Sharon sent me the link, and I didn't know. I was busy on a call with work, and I go, okay, if I get off the call by 12:30, I'm joining. If not, oh well.
Meant to be. Betsy, nice to meet you. My name is Manya. I don't think we've met before. Manya. Yeah. So just let's get everyone caught up for a second, since we have three beautiful new faces joining us, and I know Sharon will be jumping on shortly. So what we've been studying so far is a book called Ethics, a section of Mishnah. Mishnah is the oral Torah. It was transmitted alongside the written Torah to Moses, and generationally to all the leaders for 23 generations transmitted. And then about the 2nd century, Judah the Prince said, okay, we got to document this. The Jews are now being exiled. Babylonian exile is kicking in. Life is not the same as we know it. We're not all centralized in one location. And we're going to lose a lot of our wisdom that was always taught teacher to student, and taught so intentionally so that there's tone and context and space for personalization and space for really understanding what you're learning and owning it, right? But it became a need to document this. So he put this in place, and it's called the Book of Mishnah. It's part of the Torah, accepted as canonized as part of the Torah. So now, within it, we said the books of the Mishnah, there's called Shisha Sidra Mishnah, which literally means 6. Seder means an order, 6 orders of the Mishnah, and they deal with all across the spectrum of human experiences, life, from how to get to divorced, married, agricultural law, court systems. I mean, the full gamut of the human experience is all covered in the books of the Mishnah. Now comes this really kind of not as well known, and if you actually, I know my son's learning Mishnah, it covers everything from how much, tithing and tzedakah and charity, all these different things, kind of details how to and how not to, and along with the discussions and back and forth. However, there's one section of Mishnah called Ethics of Our Fathers. And we talked about it. It's more the interpersonal stuff. It's not the what to do and what not to do. It's actually how to do what you're doing. So it's not okay, don't steal or, give charity. It's okay, how should I give charity? What should my mindset be? What should my attitude be? And we've covered so far, I'm going to give you a brief recap. So far, what we've covered in Ethics of Our Fathers, number 1, we covered the first Mishnah, which talks about how to be a learner, how to be open to really learning. And we actually look at the way the Mishnah, the first opening of the Mishnah discusses the transmission of the Torah from Moses and Sinai till this Mishnah is being documented. And we actually see that it mentions 5 different prototypes or 5 different types of people. And we're actually talking about what? Those are 5 styles or 5 habits that we want to have to be a healthy learner. So we talked about dedication from Joshua, humility from Moses. We talked about all different types of personality traits. We talked about the men of the Great Assembly, how they were, they brought the Torah to practical reality. They were a court of, sages and wise men who really made sure that Torah was livable and for our day-to-day discussions and issues and struggles and whatever. So that was the first Mishnah we explored. The second 2 weeks, we really spent time really discussing judgment. Why judgment? Because there's varying different Mishnahs that deal with judgment. How to judge everyone, how to see everyone favorably. Well, how do I see everyone favorably? I look outside, I look on Facebook for 5 minutes. There's a lot of people I may feel unfavorable towards, okay? A lot of, whether it's political opinions, whether it's how they're handling this crisis, whatever. I may have a lot of opinions and it may not be favorable. So we talked about how do we actually do that in a real way? And we actually the conclusion we came to was that judging everyone favorably really, really, really had to do with what? Judging people's potential favorably, that even we don't always just look at the surface level of a person's behavior. We always have to find the potential within. And in every single Mishnah, what we've done so far is we've looked at what this means on a micro level in my own personal life within myself, and on a macro level globally, my outward facing self, right? So I also have to not judge my own self too negatively and harshly. I also have to be a favorable judge to myself, right? And too much harsh judgment doesn't work. And then we juxtapose that concept of judgment, judging potential. Hi, Judith, how are you?
Great, thank you.
Good to see you.
Thank you.
And
Good to
then
be here.
Yes, always good to learn together. And then we juxtapose that idea of judgment to the next one. Hi, Sharon, how are you?
Hi, Anya.
Good to see you.
Hi,
Sharon, I love that you're sharing our Torah learning with everyone. Anyone's welcome, right? We always love to learn together. So
Thanks.
Sharon, I'm catching everyone up because we have, sorry, is your name Betsy again?
Betsy, yeah.
Betsy, sorry, I'll get it. Everyone remembers me.
Sorry, it says Elizabeth.
No, you're fine. You're really fine. I'll actually catch on. So we have Allison, Betsy, and Lee Moore here, and so we're just catching everyone up. Okay. Should Betsy? Okay. All right. So then then we looked at the other aspect of judgment, which means don't judge someone till you walk, till you arrive at their place. And we discussed what that means is that we really don't know what's going on in someone else's life ever, right? We never know what's going on, and we have to, along with not judging comes a real space to making room for other people and their personalities and their issues. And we talked on a personal level. What that means is don't judge yourself factor in your own personal journey to where you are today, and don't just let that hold you back, right? So we talked about that aspect. And then we move forward and we kind of made peace with this whole idea of how to navigate judgment in a healthy way, personally and globally. And again, remember, we said if Mishnah is teaching us how to do what we do, then judgment is because I have a lot of young college kids who are like, being judgmental is so not okay. I don't want to be judged by the color of my hair or so we have to make place for this. There's a value in judgment, right? It keeps us healthy, it keeps us sane, it keeps us alive, right? So how to use that as a tool in a positive way to bring light into the world, because everything we're trying to do is what? Bring light into the world. That's our job. Our job is we're partners with God in the world, we're partners with God in creation, and we have to make a difference in this world. Okay. Next thing that we covered last week is we covered, from what I remember, we covered Aaron. And we said that it said, be like Aaron, who loves peace, who pursued peace, who loved all creatures and brought them close to Torah. And in every single one of these Mishnahs, when there's a whole bunch of concepts that kind of group together in one Mishnah, there's usually an interconnectedness that's not so obvious, right? When you read the Mishnah, you're like, wait, what do these two have to do with each other? But then when you peel it apart and you dissect it and you analyze it, then you're able to really gain from this things that seem maybe like they don't necessarily belong together, but they actually do. Okay. So what did we talk about Aaron? We talked about a little bit about Aaron's role as the high priest. We talked about Aaron's role in lighting the menorah, that it wasn't just good enough to light the menorah for himself or for the Mishkan, for the temporary dwelling place. It had to be a place that was light for the world. And we discussed that we wasn't able to just light a little candle and move forward. We discussed how the menorah was constructed out of one single block of gold with 7 branches. Also looking at the 7 different types of people, which we know there's more than that, but 7, as Kabbalah describes, 7 personality traits and how they manifest themselves, and how at its base and its core as humans we're one. And we have to, again, in order to bring light into the world and in order to help others bring light into the world, we have to recognize their individuality, individual branches, and yet at its core we're all one. We all are godly, we're all divine, we have a space in the world, and we have a place in this world, and the world needs us. So far, I think if I missed anything, Sharon or Sarah or Judith, jump in there. But I think that was a really good overview of about 2 months of study. There's way more layers. And a lot of these are recorded. And there's a website. I'm happy to send out the YouTube link before we wrap up if anyone wants to jump in on some of these classes or the past classes catch up. Because each of these we really unpacked deeply. Okay. Today's Mishnah, I find one that is so relevant to you and I as, for me personally, this Mishnah really, really resonates with me in a very, very deep way. And I think as women, And I know, I'm not sure if everyone here is mothers, but as women, as mothers, as wives, as humans in this world, this message is like one that's so, I can't even say, it's just so needed. It's so needed. And it's something that I contend with and try to live with daily. And that's not just hyperbole or an exaggeration. And I'll open up with a personal experience. I was once asked, what's your biggest challenge? So we run the Chabad Jewish Student Center, the community center here in town. The demand is, technically 24/7. And it was a student. She was actually interviewing me. She thinks she was for a school project. She was in an education class or a philosophy class, and she had to meet someone who was not of her heritage. And bingo, in town, I fit the description, and we met. And it was a really honest, raw question. It was like, wait, what's your biggest challenge? Now, what is my biggest challenge? So it was so interesting. My biggest challenge, really, that I feel is that the resources never meet the demand. Meaning the demand of what we can do, the potential of what we can do, the to-do list, or even the unimagined to-do list, right? Even like all the good that we want to do, and the resources being staffing, being time. There's only 24 hours in a day, and some of those need to be, like, sleeping has to happen for a few of those, right? Like humans, we got to sleep a few hours. The time, the financial means, and the staffing just don't meet the demand of what we can accomplish. And that tug and pull, that ebb and flow, and that feeling of like, not inadequacy, because I think that I genuinely believe that we're doing what we can with the resources we have, and we really, it's full on. But that constant pull of there's so much more good that needs to happen. There's so many more people that we need to reach out to. There's so much. And ladies who are here, how many times do we say, like I said, if you know anyone else who could really benefit, like it's not just like, I could look at the end of the day and be like, oh, wow, I did a lot today. Wow, that's a great feeling. But on the other hand, I also, at the same time, I feel like there's so much more to do. And there's so much more that I can accomplish. And it's interesting is because really the Lubavitcher Rebbe really, really personified this. And I think in a way it's part of our psyche as Chabad Shluchim, as the Rebbe's emissaries in different locations, is the Rebbe was like never satisfied with status quo, never satisfied with like, okay, we've accomplished, so let's stop. And you really see that within the way he kind of framed and shaped Chabad as a movement through his leadership. Like when the Rebbe passed away 26 years ago, people were like, oh, Chabad's done, no leader, out. And like, yeah, now we're at like over 5,000 centers, rabbis and rebbitzins around the world, right? And that was about maybe 1,500. And that's tremendous growth in 26 years, right? Because it was like, never like, be okay. Like, but then how do I wrestle with, and I'm curious, I'm gonna turn this to you ladies in a second. How do you wrestle with, I'm doing good, I've got this, I'm accomplishing, yet there's so much more good to do. So I would love to hear your thoughts. Do you ever feel tugged between what I'm accomplishing and my to-do list, or ever tugged between my husband needs me more, my children need more, my family needs more, my home needs more, my health needs more, my sleep needs more, and like, I can't, I'm just human. So anyone, does this resonate with you? Please like take a second, jump in, share your thoughts and your opinions. Like I would love to hear your perspective on it. Go ahead, share, feel free, jump in. Just unmute yourself. I think you just have to unmute yourself. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
My house needs more time and care.
Yeah.
It's interesting in Home Depot, all the sales of like, well, now everyone's home, so many people are home, the sales of like home fixing things, like suddenly we were in our own homes. We couldn't ignore like the fact that, oh, our books are still in boxes from the move last year. And oh, we never hung up our photos that we want to hung up. Like suddenly all those things that are like in our face. Anything else that you feel like you're being told?
I think that it's, and it just may be me, that even though I may accomplish something, you can always improve. You can always be better. It's really like never good enough, even if other people look at it and say, okay, that's good enough. It's like, no, I know this can be better. And this is like in so many different aspects of my life, either with cleaning my bathroom, or with my professional work, or with my, personal relationships with people. I could just see this in so many different ways. I just don't ever really see, even like if other people might say good enough, it's like, well, no, I know it's not really. My sister sometimes says, Betsy, stop. That's good. Leave it. You got to move on.
Right.
Good enough.
Right.
Good enough.
Right.
That's it. Go. Move on. Don't be a perfectionist. Just done is better than perfect, and move on.
I've actually heard the line that perfection is the enemy of progress. That's an interesting one.
Yeah.
And I think like we can, I definitely, for me, the journey of life has taught me to let go of a lot of self-imposed standards of what I think something must look like. Like I'll give you an example. We did the challah in a box. Did anyone notice it wasn't in a box? It was in a bag. The logo said challah in a box, and the boxes didn't come in time, and I wasn't going to push off the program for it. I'm like, you know what? Challah in a box can also be in a bag. No one here. Did it bother any of you? No, of course not. So exactly. I did, but I also knew what's priority and what's superfluous. We say that the term is, we say in Hasidic phraseology, we say ikr and tafel, the essence of an issue and the superficial layers that, that come up.
I think that's an important point, because as you were talking about feeling like you never can do enough, I feel like as I've gotten older, I'm less subject to that, but it's more of the perfectionist part, that there's a distinction between feeling overwhelmed because you can't get something perfect and still feeling like there's still more to be done. But that's a much, for me anyway, at my age, a calmer feeling. It's like if I die today, I can look back and feel like I've accomplished much of what I wanted to do. And every day, it's another day to keep working on that.
It's funny you were just mentioning about, being older and looking back. I was thinking of a conversation I had, who was it with? It was like a few days ago. It was about children. And I remember when my children were young, I was like, oh my gosh, I lost my temper. I was tired. I did this wrong. I did that. They're going to all end up in the penitentiary, and they're going to be in therapy for the rest of their lives because I've messed them up. I shout. One time I was driving them to school because I was teaching also, and I was driving, and I finally got to school, and it was only like a 12-minute drive. And I get there and I park the car. I go, oh my God. My throat hurts. It's hoarse. I had the windows rolled up and I was yelling at my kids the whole time. They're going to be in
12 minutes is a lot of yelling, right?
I would have never spoken like that to my students, ever. But guess what? They're grown. They are wonderful, wonderful kids. They have become everything I would want my adult children to be. None of them are in jail. None of them are in Skid Row. They're good people. They're accomplished people, but they're good people. But I'm really worried. I'm worried that I just was totally messing up my kids. And you know what? I think there's a little bit of grace in there.
Right. I'm going to add to what you're mentioning about grace and kind of what Sarah said. I think that we also sometimes have to realize that what we perceive as what is on our to-do list, that's in our own head. No one else, meaning no one else is telling us what, there's things we got to do. We got to eat, we got to sleep, we got to take care of our health. There's things that we have to do. But the level of perfection, or the things that we hold ourselves to, sometimes it's our own self-imposed. Like, I'll give you a very good example. So we try to do a donor report like 3 times a year on average, so that those who are partnering with Chabad get firsthand view of what their work is doing, what their partnership's doing. And our spring run is not made yet. And you know what? No one is calling me and saying, "What, you didn't send us this spring one?" It's my own box that I'm like, "Oh, this has to go out this week." Now, of course, there's a good value in having goals, and there's a good value in getting things done. And I'm a big fan. Anyone who knows, I like to get things done. And I know, Allison, you're quiet here, but I know you very, very well. And Allison is the queen of get things done, truly. And but where do we navigate this? So I want to open up. Let's jump right into the Mishnah, because I think the Mishnah has so much to teach us. And I think we're going to walk away from here, from this little, hours spent together. And it may take 2 weeks to get through this Mishnah, because I'm looking at the time already. But let's just jump right in.
What page? What page, Mom?
I'm going to tell you. Hang tight, girlfriend. Page 80. Page 80. And if you don't have the book, I'm going to have Sharon read for us in English. Sharon, you've been voluntold. You always do so well, so, sorry, lady. So it happens when you're so helpful and giving. Okay.
Okay. So Rabbi Tarfon would often say, though indeed the day is short and there is much to be done, do not be discouraged, for it is not your responsibility.
Sharon, can I ask you a favor? Read the bold first, because the bold is the actual words of the Mishnah, and the pale is some of the explanations that kind of glue it together.
Okay, gotcha.
Right, thank you.
Okay, it is not your responsibility to complete the work. You are not free to give up on trying to do it. If you have learned a lot of Torah, the heavenly court will give you a lot of reward. Your master is trustworthy to pay you the reward for your work, but know that the reward for the righteous will be in the world to come.
Okay. So first of all, it actually starts with, and Limor, you're and Judith, you're both fluent in Hebrew. It starts with Hu Haya Omer, he would say. How does it start with Hu Haya Omer, he? Who's he? Here it says Rabbi Tarfon, but how do we know from that Mishnah it's Rabbi Tarfon? Number one. Number two, Lo alecha hamlacha legmar. It's not your job to finish the work. V'lo ataven chorin livatal mimena. But it's not. You're not free to say that's not my problem. Okay. So right here, a paradox. You don't have to finish the job, but you can't ignore the fact that the job exists. Okay, where do I find myself in this? And then, interesting. Why is it going to im lamata Torah harbe? Why is this connected to learning Torah? That if you keep, if you learn a lot of Torah, God's going to give you a lot of reward. And why does it refer to the master, like Hashem being the master is trustworthy to pay the reward for your work? But just know it's not necessarily right now. So clearly, there must be some connection between this Torah learning and the first part of Mishnah. And where do we know that it's talking about Rabbi Tarfon? How do we even have any clue? So the reason we know it's Rabbi Tarfon is if you go back a page, can you hold on? There's a phone ringing and no one, hold on. Okay, new setup this week. My laptop broke. Sharon, I told everyone my laptop broke my battery died 53 minutes into teaching an hour-long class yesterday on Facebook Live. And I didn't even notice it because it was plugged in, and I've been using this laptop for years. So just time. Okay. It's okay. Okay. So how do we know it's Rabbi Tarfon, and where is this Mishnah fall in place? Kind of in order to understand that, you got to go back a page to 78. And here see in the bold what Rabbi Tarfon's saying. So this Mishnah is a continuation. He says part one before with its own message, and then the next Mishnah is him continuing on. So in order to understand this Mishnah, you gotta understand the Mishnah before. Okay, what is the Mishnah before talking about? Rabbi Tarfon Omer, the Rabbi Tarfon says, the day is short, hayom katzer, hamlacha meruba. There's a lot of work, the workers are lazy, the reward for this is great, and the master is pressuring for the workers. So he starts off by talking about this master beforehand, and who's this master he's referring to. So Rabbi Tarfon's not talking about a construction management project, okay? He's not talking about what it means to be a good boss. Rabbi Tarfon's actually describing human nature and our relationship with learning and with Torah and with us being better humans in this world. And that's why kind of if you look at number Tezayin, if you look at Mishnah Tezayin on its own, the 16th Mishnah on its own, it's kind of odd that it doesn't drop his name in the beginning. It's kind of odd that it's talking about work, but then it's connecting to Torah. Like, what does my work or my to-do list have to do with Torah, right? But now if you string it together, it kind of makes a lot more sense. First, he's talking about the day is short. Anyone ever feel like the day is short and the work is long? On a literal level, I guarantee you sometimes I'm like, what? That's all I got done today? What, the day's over again? I feel it with the weeks now. Like, the week's over. I had so much I wanted to accomplish this week, right? And the workers are lazy. Human nature. We avoid things we don't always want to do, right? How many things, I remember once a student came to me and she said, do you know how to sew? I was like, where is this going? I said, yeah, I do. She says, oh, good. And she leans back and shows me her pants that the button's missing. She said, I said, listen, I have 3 options for you. Option 1, I know we're home away from home, but option 1 is give it to me and I will put it on my to-do list along with the pile of stuff that need to be sewn. And by the time you graduate in 4 years, you should get it. Option 2 is label here. I think label was 10. So label here can teach you how to sew the button on. Or option 3, I'll give you a number of a seamstress. She ended up choosing option 2 and label taught her how to sew on a button, by the way. So Chabad, full service of Chabad, right? The point was that, yeah, sure, give it to me, I'll take care of it. But it's not top on my to-do list. Top of my to-do list is make sure that there's food to Shabbat or that the weekly email goes out or there's things that are a higher priority on my to-do list. And I think at times we struggle. I could definitely say I struggle, and I'm sure this is something, many of you can relate to, struggle on making sure the things that are super important for us to function as healthy human beings make it to the top of the to-do list. Honestly, until quarantine started, for me, exercising was not top on the list, and I've moved it higher up on the list because I suddenly realized when I was faced with a lot of time and I wasn't running, that it was nothing to do with time. It had to do with a mindset and prioritizing. And suddenly when I did and I shifted my priorities, guess what happened? Once I shifted my priorities, I found a half hour a day to do something healthy for my body, right? So a lot of times, what we suppose or what we prioritize, that becomes our work list. Now, the day, yes, is short, meaning life is limited. The work is long. There's an unlimited amount of things we could do. Where things are on our to-do list is a really good question we need to ask ourselves. Like Sharon, you mentioned that for you during this time period, carving out that sacred time to learn Torah has been your gift to yourself, your version of self-care. So we all have to carve out time for what's important. And that's why when people say, do you have the time? I say, you make time for what's important. And I really believe that. I really, 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 really believe that because time is like this. And maybe that's because anyone knows me, I push the envelope on time all the time. I'm saying that a lot, but anyone knows me, I'm consistently cramming a lot in a very short amount of time. People how? I'm like, it works. You just it's a construct. We got to recognize it. There are only 24 hours a day, but there's a lot of flexibility what we could do with it. So that being said, let's first kind of just gloss over some of the ideas in the first Mishnah, and we're not going to go fully in depth because I think the second one is one where I really would like to focus on. The idea that there's a lot of work to do and the day is short, we all relate to that. We all, on a personal level, we understand that. On a big level, we understand that. The workers are lazy. What is that referring to? That basically, honestly, if we put in more effort, we can achieve more, right? We all know that. There's no area in our life that we cannot improve. And you know what's interesting? is that actually the reason there's this seemingly frustrating, I have more to accomplish and I need to do more, actually is because we're created in the image of God. We say, B'Tselem Elokim Na'aseh Adam. Man is made in the image of God. We have a godly divine soul within us. God is infinite. Our divine soul is infinite. Therefore, what's infinite? Our potential. What we can accomplish in this world. Which is why when someone once asked me, like, oh, like how many kids are you planning on having? And I was like, as many as God gives, graces us with, blesses us with. Because if you really see a child as a divine soul with infinite potential, goodness gracious, the world needs more infinite potential in this world, more light in this world. Now our job is to raise them. That's a whole separate subject for a separate time. But but at the end of the day, it says in Talmud that someone who has 100 desires 200. Someone who has 200 desires 1,000. Someone who has 1,000 wants 100,000. As humans, we're created with this infinite drive and energy that we have within us that can push us and motivate us because we have divinity within us. Because we're holy, because we're created in the image of God. And that's what, by the way, what's a sign that a human being is not doing well? When they have no drive to do anything. Because a healthy human created with divine energy and motivation wants to accomplish, needs to accomplish. But I remember having a conversation with a mother. She said, my child has no confidence. I said, have her do something for others, productive. Have her make dinner for the family. Have her wash her own laundry. Have her we're meant to be doers. We're meant to be. So yes, that's how we're hardwired. And we do feel good when we're accomplishing. There's nothing more wonderful. I have always a notebook. Anyone ever knows me, I always have my to-do list, but I always have a notebook and there's scribbled notes everywhere and there's to-do lists and I redo the to-do lists every week. I'm a big lists fan and they don't always go away, but sometimes I look at the list that I made a month ago, I'm like, whoa, almost everything's off this list, right? So we're hardwired to be productive, to do, and we know, Sarah, you're a psychologist, you know this, we all know this. When we say something's a problem is when it stops you from doing what you need to do. Basics. Someone can't sleep, can't eat, can't function, can't get dressed, can't shower. We know there's major warning signs, right? They're waving a flag saying help. And that's because that's how God created us. And that's what Kabbalah explains us. God created us to be doers. God created us to be productive. So now with that in mind, hold on one second. With that in mind, now we can understand this idea and we all can understand how there's sometimes laziness creeps in. Sometimes, I know, I avoid the things that are not the easiest for me, right? We all relate to that, right? That like closet that I don't really need to look into and suddenly like 5 years later, I'm like, yikes. You ever moved and suddenly you like discover all the stuff that you've ignored for Sarah's smiling, so she gets it, right? All the stuff that you ignored for years,
25 years in one house.
Woo! Just woo! After we moved from New Jersey, I told you I never want to move again. After we moved into this house, I said, I'm never moving again. It's just, right? You're suddenly faced with all the things you ignored for so long. So we all understand, and it's not laziness as in like, oh my gosh, you're such a lazy person. It's like we avoid that which is difficult, or we avoid that which is not comfortable, we avoid that which we, are overwhelmed with. It's avoided. Yes.
Also, over the years, again, as I get older, I discover that a lot of the things that I thought needed to be done, if you let them go, they didn't need to be done, really. Like you're saying, with the putting it in a box, putting the challah kit in a box, I mean, it did not make one bit of difference. And
right.
There are many things, if we can discriminate between what is the ikar of what you really need to be doing versus what you think you need to be doing, then not that you don't have, not that you have tons more leisure time, but you have the priorities get sorted out, and it feels better when you get something done, because when you are spending all your energy on getting the frivolous things done, it still feels like you haven't accomplished anything.
I really love that you mentioned, prioritizing frivolous and not, and energy. And I actually think that one of the things that constantly try to remind myself, and I really like, it's like a daily exercise, is where am I putting my energy? Like, where's the best use of my energy right now? And it's a choice. Positive energy, negative energy, certain people we surround ourselves with, it is a choice. We can't underestimate the fact that we're a lot more emboldened and empowered with that decision of how our energy is used. And yeah, I guess that's a certain wisdom you have with experience. And obviously, you know, I'm not living on this earth that many years, but I'm definitely trying to learn from my experiences and pick and choose. I'm telling you, probably 5 years ago, maybe not 5 years ago, but 10 years ago, before my triplets were born, for sure, there was a huge shift in prioritizing once they were born. It was like a very growing experience, literally, and in many ways, literally, figuratively, emotionally, spiritually, in all ways. And one of the things was, it was a really incredible exercise of completely letting go and picking priorities. And 10 years ago, maybe I would have been anxious, and not anxious, but stressed out about the fact that it wasn't in a box, and sent Yessie to run at the last second and stressed him out. Like, I would have done that, you know, and no, you know, go in with a relaxed mindset. And I think it's something I'm working on daily. And by the way, nothing like being quarantined with, you know, 6 children. That's also a very growing experience, about letting go of priorities, all these things. And none of these things I think I've mastered. I think they're a work in progress. And so I think that's why, you know, any part of Torah that we're like restudying it, you know, again and again and again, we're restudying it because there's something new to learn from this. And we revisit ideas, the idea of letting go when I was, you know, with one baby, and the idea of letting go when I had triplets, and I went from 3 kids to 6 kids, and like this, it's a very different letting go. As an organization, letting go when our organization was new and getting established, or letting go now, looks different. We're prioritizing. I wouldn't say even letting go, but prioritizing. So now we understand where Rabbi Tarfon is coming from in the second part of the Mishnah. So he's first saying, he's establishing, there's a lot of work to do. The day is short. The work is a lot. The workers can be lazy, meaning avoiding things. And the master is the reward is great, and the master is pressuring the workers to accomplish it. So what is this? Rabbi Tarfon's, again, like I said, he's not a motivational coach teaching a business how to function. What Rabbi Tarfon actually is a rabbi, and he's helping Jews connect with their essence, their identity, their Torah, and maximize their potential. So Rabbi Tarfon is actually saying, who's the master, who's the boss? God. Now we all know that the to-do list from God, and the to-do list that the Torah gives us, it's unlimited. There's always more to do. There's always more we can grow as a person. We can always be refining ourselves, both in the Torah and mitzvot, the Torah that we learn, and the mitzvot that we do. It's just because I managed to light Shabbat candles last week for Shabbat doesn't mean that I managed to have a Shabbat dinner. And just because I managed to have a Shabbat dinner doesn't mean I managed to have challah. I'm giving a silly example, but there's all more examples in our own lives of areas and ways that we can constantly be growing, evolving, and improving. And that's, you know, one of the lines I heard years ago that I really think resonates to me with, you're not always gonna be everything to everyone. Meaning, you're not always gonna be the best daughter, the best sister, the best wife, the best mother, the best, and I think all of us can relate to that, because we're actually not designed that way. We're designed as human beings with ups and downs, with flaws. And we said, Sarah, you know, in our class, Sarah and I had the, I think, privilege and pleasure. It was, for me at least, a privilege and a pleasure. We did this session together on Kabbalah and psychology. And we co-presented. So we did a little, I love the way you described it as a dance. And we did it for about 80 girls from around the country, college girls. And I enjoyed it immensely. But one of the things we're talking about is being realistic about who we are, and acknowledging that as human beings, we have human nature is, we're humans, right? We have this human nature, and we're not angels. We're not meant to be infinite and perfect. And yes, we have divinity within us, holiness within us, and godly divine soul, but we're not always going to be the best daughter, the best wife, the best mother. We're not actually meant to. The nature of life and the nature of us as human beings is ups and downs. And we got to make space for that. We got to make space for that, because I think often we're just our own worst enemy a lot of times in a lot of ways. So now with that as the platform that we're going to look at everything in, now let's look back into this Mishnah, because I didn't forget that we're actually going to cover this Mishnah today. We're going to try. At least we're going to introduce it. And maybe next class we'll do part 2. We'll see. Okay. So now back into our current Mishnah on page 80. Now we know it's Rabbi Tarfon. Now we even know, we'll now understand, based on what we talked about in the last Mishnah, we'll understand why it's Rabbi Tarfon who's telling us this. That number one, it's not your responsibility to complete all the work, but you're not either free to give up on doing or accomplishing. And if you learn a lot of Torah, you will get a lot of reward. Your master is trustworthy to pay you the reward for your work, but it won't be now, not instant gratification. And I think in our lives, starting with the last idea, we can all understand how the world isn't about instant gratification. And I think, you know, Betsy, you mentioned about investing in your children and doubting and worrying and years and energy. And I think, you know, for some of us who are maybe a little younger and we're in the trenches right now, I know Limor is definitely in the trenches. Sharon, I feel like my feet are in half of one trench and half of a different. My oldest is 20, and I already see like my 18-year-old and 20-year-old are, you know, real mature mensches and adults, and I'm still parenting younger kids, a 15-year-old and 3 10-year-olds. So I feel like I'm starting to see that a little bit more. Like, oh, they do grow up, and oh, like every mistake you make is not gonna, like, you know, like, so I get it a little bit more. I'm starting to get to that side a little bit more. But I think as parents, when you're in that trenches and you're so hard on yourself and you're seeing what's going on and you're so intense, it feels like, will it ever get there? So we have to understand that we're planting seeds, right? And not everything we're going to be able to see now, right? And so sometimes it's in the world to come, sometimes it's in the future, sometimes it's unknown, sometimes it's beyond us what those rewards will be, the ripple effects of our rewards. So that's kind of a clear, easy thing to say. And we also even understand why Rabbi Tarfon's using the word master, because he's talking about master of the universe. He's talking about Hashem. He's talking about God. And not a taskmaster, but someone who says, look, I know you, I created you, I know your potential, I know you could do well. And God also created us as partners with him in creation. He needs us, me and you, this world. The idea of tikkun olam, of repairing the world, is the world needs us, right? So now, knowing that that's who we're talking about, who our boss is, who the master is, and he gave us that infinite potential and designed us so understands what we're capable of, we also have to focus and reflect on the idea of what does it mean, like, let's compare and contrast, you know, the day is short, the workers are lazy, the master is demanding, to this Mishnah where it says, Lo alacha hamlacha legmar, it's not your job to finish the job. But you also, lo atapen chorim vatal mimena, you can't just ignore the fact that the job exists. So how do we now still kind of navigate both, again, seemingly conflicting realities? So any thoughts before we jump into some of the beautiful explanations, beautiful ideas? Anyone want to jump in and share, you know, their thoughts on this? Because I think it now kind of makes sense for this Mishnah a little bit more, just putting it in the framework of the past Mishnah, the Mishnah from before. Any thoughts? Okay. Yeah, Sharon, go ahead. You're muted. Just mute yourself.
Okay, so it just came to me. It's just a lot of times you're always saying, Manya, is that Torah, you just learn all your life. Like you never arrive. And I don't know if it's paralleling the fact that, well, it is, okay, so it's not your responsibility to complete all the work, but you're not free to give up on. In other words, to me, anyway, so it's just like continuing to Torah. So what we do, and you've also said a lot of times, and I got to go back to this because it was just a life-changing moment for me about 3 years ago, maybe 4 years ago in one of these Tea and Torahs. But you said that what's going on in the spiritual is affecting us in the physical. So if we are engaged in learning the Torah, it is our responsibility to continue, that our reward will come. What we're doing in the spiritual will also impact our physical.
100%.
Okay.
Not only that, Sharon, thank you for sharing that, but I think not only that, Torah, if we understand through the lens, the Torah is not a history book, because we said if it was a history book, it would not be a good history book, right? Names and dates and orders, it's mixed, right? Torah is divine, and Torah is, as the description of Torah, we said, is a teacher. But Torah is a guide. Torah is what we describe as chachmato or ritzono shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu, God's will and God's wisdom. Well, if God is infinite, then his will and wisdom is infinite. So now it makes sense. You're never gonna learn the entire Torah. Don't wait till you arrive. It's an infinite world. But that doesn't mean you shouldn't take the first step in the first direction. And us gathering here together weekly, we're putting our skin in the game. We're putting our foot in. We're saying, I'm trying. I may not get it all. Look, ladies, we've been studying for probably, 2 months, Mishnah? And I think the first 2 weeks, we just even discussed the historical context and what Mishnah is. We've covered, 6 Mishnahs? Right? So that's only one of the sections in Mishnah. There is so much more, So it's very clear to us that Torah is infinite. Torah's wisdom is infinite. And so I could get overwhelmed with there's no way I'll ever accomplish scholarship or get where I want to get, so I might as well not try. Well, that would be a big shame, right? Because think of all the amount. I know for me, every single week that we learn Mishnah together, every single week that we learn Pirkei Avot together, I leave these, hour-long classes realigned in a certain area of my life, right? I leave thinking wow, I need to really refocus on that or prioritize that, or how does that stay into this aspect of my life, right? So what Rabbi Tarfon's, part of what he's saying here is you can't, that's paralleling it to Torah, which you did a great job. But on a personal level also, just because I'm never going to be the perfect mother doesn't mean I shouldn't try. Or just because I'm never going to be the perfect wife doesn't mean I shouldn't be sensitive today. And we can look at that in any area of our life where maybe are not measuring up and we need to improve. And so when a task or a thing seems so infinite or so daunting, we'll throw our hands up and say, forget it, I can't. No, today you try. You take one step forward. So really, this is a very practical Mishnah, which is, I think, for me as a mother and as a wife and as a woman, I feel like sometimes I look at the world on a macrocosmic level and I'm like, the world is such a mess. You could really think that. You could really look and say, whoa, there's no way I can make a difference. I'm just sitting in this little house in College Station, in this little city. I know College Station has this big city complex, but we really are a little city. Let's be honest. Okay? I remember when my kids moved here and they went to the airport, they're like, this is the size of the post office in New Jersey. They were so confused. They're like, what is this place? It's a cute little city. We love it. But I could say to myself, there's no way I can make a difference. But we can, and we have to. And you can't free yourself up from the fact that it's not my problem. Not my problem. Not my problem. But on the other hand, if you take the world's burdens on your shoulders, that's also not healthy. And I think on a personal level, within our own selves and our own families, this is so real and relevant. And I think on a global level, and we know it's just one step at a time. And I remember the university, the Bush School had years ago, it's so blurry to me what the details were, but the Bush School had this exhibit from about, I think it was about Portugal's role. I don't remember exactly what it was. My husband made me remember. It was about one of the countries in Europe, smaller country. I don't remember exactly what it was. Their role in helping in the Holocaust, and it was an exhibit. It was a traveling exhibit, and they asked me to speak, and I got up there and I told the very famous story, which you may have heard of. This young man walking along the beach, and the tide had waved all these starfish up that needed to be in the water. And, this young boy walks by and he sees all these starfish on the beach, and they're going to die. They need the water, right? So he picks them up and he throws it into the water, and he picks the next up. And an older gentleman walks by and goes what are you doing? He says, I'm saying, they're going to die. And he says, but there's one of you, and there's thousands and thousands of starfish. You're going to make a difference. He said, picked up one, threw it in, and said, I did to that one. Picked up the next one and that one. Meaning, it's not about accomplishing it all, because that's not realistic. It's frustrating, but we're not actually meant to accomplish all. We also can't ignore what's out there. We also can't ignore the needs of the community, of the world, and healing the world. Tikkun olam, repairing the world, really starts in our own little world in here, and then in our own little world in our homes, and then our world out there. And it's ripple effects, the ripple effect of producing healthy humans who are going to go out into the world and bring light into the world. That's how we can do it in a real practical way. So yes, the parallel to learning Torah is that just like we'll never learn it all in Torah, and just like we still try and we still put efforts in and we still work, and this infinite wisdom has reward. You know, it's interesting, if you look at the word that describes the giving of a reward, if Rabbi Tarfon's using the language of a master, then he should say like pay. Why does he say notnin? He's giving, from the word noten. Why wouldn't he use Limor? How do you say pay? Mishalem, right? Mishalem. Shalem. Yeah, we have Judith and we have Limor. He both fluent in Hebrew, right? Thank God. So l'shalem means to pay. If it's a master and we're talking about a work, then it should, why use the word noten, the shoresh? So noten is one of these interesting words spelled nun, taf, nun, which is a palindrome. In both ways, you can read it in both ways. When you give, you're also receiving. And when you receive, you can give. It's this incredible cycle of being a giver. And so we have to look at the problems of the world and the problems in our home and the problems in ourselves, and not insurmountable, and not, oh my gosh, there's no reward or there's nothing that's going to matter. Slow and steady. The reward will come. Put efforts in. It's one step at a time, one moment at a time. And there's a beautiful story on the bottom. I don't know if anyone read it, at the bottom of page 80, that I think we could wrap with. Did anyone read the story? If you have it, you want to share it with us, Sarah? Because I think it's just an incredible story.
The one, Be the Best You?
Yeah.
Reb Zushi of Anipoli once said, I am not afraid that when I arrive in the heavenly court, they will ask me why I wasn't like our forefathers or Moshe Rabbeinu. I am afraid they will ask me why I wasn't Zushi. Hashem doesn't expect you to be as great as any other person. What he does expect of you is to maximize your own potential. A person who has a deep mind or is a quick learner is expected to learn more Torah than those who don't. A person blessed with wealth is expected to give more tzedakah than those who have less. A person who is naturally influential has the responsibility to influence others for the better. Each person is expected to use the tools and the talents that she was given to serve Hashem to the best of her ability.
I love that story of Reb Zusha, because Reb Zusha was this incredible master, incredible righteous person. And actually the story is told that he basically on his deathbed, he was kind of like down. His students were like, you know, you were Reb Zusha. Like, he said, God's not going to ask me why I wasn't like Moses, or I wasn't like Queen Esther, or I wasn't like, God's going to ask me why I wasn't the best me. And that's part of like the heavenly, the conclusion in the world to come is that while we're in this world, we have a to-do list that only we can do, and the parts of the world that need us. And you can't expect, just like you can't expect, you know, a duck to climb a tree, and you can't expect, you know, an elephant to fly. God knows us, and he knows what he could expect of us and demand of us. And we just have to keep moving forward. Put our work in. Yes, we're not going to accomplish it all. Not on our short to-do list or long to-do list, but that doesn't mean we can't put in our best effort and work hard and do what we can. So there's an analogy given to this king has this large pit, and he says to different workers, I need you to fill it. And the foolish worker looks and says, there's no way I'll ever be able to fill this pit. Forget it, not interested. The other worker says, I can't, maybe I won't fill it all, but I can definitely put in an honest day's work. And that's what we need to do. We don't need to solve it all. We don't need to fix it all. We don't need to even accomplish it all. We need to put in our honest, roll up our sleeves And at the end of our, day, literally at the end of our days, we have to be able to be honest with ourselves. Are we putting in what we could do? And obviously there's different strategy to doing that, making to-do lists, having accountability, setting SMART goals, all of that. But at the end of the day, we have to believe in the fact that we're partners with God in creation. We have a divine soul within that is good and precious. And we have to roll up our sleeves and get work done. L'chaim, to getting work done. I'm out of water. I think that means Torah and Tea is over. I didn't even have tea today. I had water, just water. So it's a wrap. I'm going to jump off, not because I don't want to sit and chat, but I'm jumping off because I have another class starting very soon. I want to make sure that everyone has lunch before. But it's always a pleasure learning, and we'll continue to learn together. L'chaim.
It was a pleasure meeting you. Thank you.
I'm so glad you joined us.
Yes.
Reminder, this is fun. So is it the same link every week?
Yeah. Yes.
This was great.
I'm glad you enjoyed it.
Sharon, let me send you an email and ask you where to get the book.
Absolutely. Absolutely, Sharon. Sharon, just give Betsy my email address.
Yes.
Okay? We'll be in touch.
Maya, are we having the session with Sarah tomorrow? Sarah?
Sarah, I'm going to go check the link. If there's, Sarah and I would, I don't want to speak for you, Sarah, but we want to continue if there's a need just to have sessions with, whatever. So I'm going to check, Sarah, I'm going to share the link with you, and we'll send out an email if it's a message if it's happening. Sound like a plan?
Yep. Okay.
Take care, lovely ladies. Bye. Have a good one.
Bye-bye. Good to see you.
Bye.